Mehluli Malisa, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of This Day.
Thank you for inviting me, John.
Let's start first of all with talking about the Constitution from where we are today. In June 2025, Bill 7 was argued that it was unconstitutional due to the lack of wide public consultation. What legal standard must be met for a constitution process to be considered genuinely people-driven?
Okay, so thank you for that question. I'll start by saying that the starting point is that the Constitution is the people's document. It does not belong to government. So the legal standard that was established by the Constitutional Court in the case of Celestine Mukandila and Monia Zulu, the one you just referred to, the one that declared Bill 7 to be unconstitutional, set the bar that for any constitutional amendment to have legitimacy or for it to be legal, it must have widespread and meaningful public participation. Meaning that as the people's document, before any text can be written, it has to come from the people themselves, who are the owners of the document. So the standard is that before you can even put pen to paper, you need to consult the people. And the people are the ones who should feed into that text, and anything that you put in that amendment should come from the people themselves. That is how our Constitutional Court, in that case, interpreted the law. And with that interpretation of the law by the Constitutional Court, it means that anything that falls below that standard, like Bill 7, becomes illegal.
This is interesting, and we'll get into talking about the current amendment to the Constitution, but let's draw it a little bit back and look at Zambia. We have had to amend our Constitution a number of times, but even times that we have not amended the Constitution, we are always actively talking about the need to amend the Constitution. Does Zambia have an unstable legal framework?
I would say yes. Zambia is one of the countries which suffers from what I would call constitutional instability. Okay, State Counsel Sangwa, one of the leading constitutional lawyers in this country, has said that almost every president that we have had has embarked on trying to tamper with the Constitution or try to change the Constitution in some way, and that is true. And if we go back in history, there are quite a number of attempts that we've made. I can go back in history. I can start in 1972 during the late former president's time, Kenneth Kaunda, during the UNIP days. So there was a commission of inquiry called the Chona Commission in 1972. I wasn't born that time. Those who were there can remember that that's what led to the one-party state. So this was led by the then Vice President Mainza Chona, who at the appointment of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda had a commission that went around the country getting views from the people about the so-called one-party state, and that led to the amendment of the Constitution in 1973 and introduced the one-party state. Then, about 20 years later, in 1990, when it was clear that the one-party state was untenable or it was crumbling, another constitutional review process commenced, still under President Kaunda, and this was called the Mvunga Commission. So the Mvunga Commission was tasked with getting the views of Zambians on whether they wanted to end the one-party dispensation and bring back multi-party democracy. And that led to the famous 1991 Constitution, which brought back multi-party politics. Then, as if that was not enough, in 1993, between 1993 and 1996, President Chiluba then appointed the Mwanakatwe Commission, and it was chaired by Mr. John Mwanakatwe at the time. So you can say this commission was tasked with amending the Constitution, and and the Constitution eventually was amended in 1996. And interestingly, though, is that most of the recommendations from John Mwanakatwe's commission were rejected by President Chiluba. They had a lot of progressive recommendations, especially expanding the Bill of Rights and things like that, but the executive refused. But interestingly, what came out of the 1996 amendment was the infamous parentage clause that ended up, we all know what happened. Former President Kaunda was deported. At some time, he was declared stateless. Okay, now that was very interesting period of time. As if we had seen enough, we were at it again. 2003, we had a new president that time, President Mwanawasa, Levi Mwanawasa. He appointed what was called the Mungomba Commission, which was led by Mr. William Mungomba. And this commission had 41 members, right, which was drawn from a cross-section of society. And the Mungomba Commission went around the country again and got all sorts of views from Zambians. And they produced a draft constitution, a full constitution from Article 1 up to the end, complete with the Bill of Rights. Okay? And then the interesting thing about the Mungomba Commission is that they actually recommended how they wanted the draft to be what? To be adopted. And they had recommended that the draft be adopted using a constituent assembly. So what happened afterwards was that the NCC Act was passed, National Constitutional Conference Act. If you remember correctly, I think I was old enough that time. I remember the drama that unfolded. So the NCC Act established what was supposed to be an adoption body to adopt the Constitution. And it consisted of civil society, all political parties, although some political parties boycotted the NCC. But the NCC sat for 3 years, okay? And then they produced a draft. But because of these issues that were happening of boycotts and everything, there was no consensus. The whole thing failed. And in 2008, when President Banda took over, after the demise of President Mwanawasa, he failed to push through the Mungomba amendments through Parliament. Okay? Then, 2011, we had a new president again. And like all his predecessors, he was at it again. Mr. Michael Chilufya-Sata. But what was different about him was that he said that he was not going to set up a commission of inquiry like the previous president. He just set up what is called a technical committee, because he said we've had a number of commissions. So the committee's job was to consolidate what the other commissions had done, but they also went around the country, and they took 2 years, and they produced a draft in 2014. So it's actually 3 years. From 2011 to 2014 is 3 years. So they finished their work in 3 years, right? And then when they submitted their report, or some of the things they submitted did not go down well with the executive. And at the end of the day, their draft was subjected to 2 processes. First, it was adopted by Parliament, of which Parliament edited some of the things that had been put by the technical committee. And then the Bill of Rights was put to a referendum, and it failed to garner the votes. So the Bill of Rights was not changed. So that led now to the constitution that we have now, the 2016 constitution, which was ascended to by the new president, the late Edgar Chagwa Lungu, who himself in 2019 tried to amend the constitution by way of what they called the National Dialogue Forum. Yeah, National Dialogue Forum, which was an act of parliament as well. And the National Dialogue Forum led to the infamous Bill 10. And the Bill 10, well, was, if I can say, shoved down the throats of the Zambian people, who civil society rejected it left, right, and center. But it ended up failing to garner the votes in parliament. That's how it collapsed. Now, fast forward to that, as if we had enough drama, the drama continued. The new president, again, the successor to Edgar Lungu, His Excellency, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, who is the current president, also, like his predecessors, didn't want to be left behind and decided he wants to amend the constitution. And the way he went about it was strange. It had never been seen before. For the first time, we had a bill appearing from the Ministry of Justice, which nobody knew about. It just appeared, and we were told, okay, these are the amendments that the country has to go through. And eventually, the issue was taken to court, and there was a pushback from civil society, from all manner of Zambians. And this is where we are now. And Bill 7 was declared to be unconstitutional. So yeah, that's a brief history of where we're coming from. So this is nothing new, and I can say, yes, I agree with you 100% that we are a country that suffers from constitutional instability.
Are we suffering from constitutional instability because we don't have a good constitution, or are we suffering from constitutional instability because it is so easy to change the constitution?
I think a bit of both, but I wouldn't say that our constitution is not good, okay? Of course, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Like any subject of human endeavor, you can't produce a perfect document. However, to say that it is very bad would not be true. It's not true. So the constitutional instability, I would say, is attributed to, one, lack of a people-driven process, okay? All the processes we've had before, if you saw, they were being dominated by the executive. So where you have a process which is politically dominated and dominated by politicians, right, the likelihood is that the end result is a product that does not suit the majority of the people, but suits the political elite. Now, because of that, the constitution suffers from a lack of ownership by the people. It's a matter of it looking like it serves the interests of the politicians, right? So whichever political formation comes and takes over the reins of government wants to manipulate the constitution so that it suits its political agenda. That, to me, is what has led to this constitutional instability. Whereas, if we had embarked on a process that is purely people-driven, purely in national interest and not in political interest, then I think we would have a bit of stability, because the outcome would be in the national interest and not in the political elite's interest, or the political elite at the time, whatever their agenda is. So that's what I would say. So changing the constitution, it's relatively easy because of Article 79. The constitution has got the entrenched provisions and the non-entrenched provisions. So the entrenched provisions are the Bill of Rights. Right? The Bill of Rights is almost impossible to change without a broad consensus, without agreement. So if we're going to change the Bill of Rights, almost the whole country has to agree that the Bill of Rights has to be changed. Now, with the other parts of the Constitution, whoever has a majority in Parliament, who can get, if you can garner a 2/3 majority in Parliament, you can easily change it. So maybe we should look, as this technical committee that has been appointed is sitting, maybe they should look at entrenching other provisions of the Constitution to protect them. For example, the issue of term limits, okay? I would say that that should be one of the provisions that are entrenched, that are not easily changed. Because we can have a president who will come and have a 2/3 majority and then remove the term limits, okay? So if we are going to be serious about what we're doing, then some other parts of the Constitution also need entrenching beyond the Bill of Rights.
When you talk about the Constitution taking a political turn, isn't this inevitable? Because the people entrusted with making laws in the country are politicians. Members of Parliament are politicians, and they inadvertently or unintentionally always have the political undertone that they carry from their various political parties and everything in between. So how do we then separate this this politics from the Constitution if it is being implemented by politicians?
That's a very nice question. Okay, so the genesis is this. I said from the start that government. Okay, I didn't say this. I say that the Constitution is a people's document. So let me take it further and say a government is a product of the Constitution. Government is created by the Constitution, right? The Constitution creates all institutions of the state. So politicians or whoever is in government derives their power from that constitutional document, right? Now the question you'd ask me is, where does the Constitution come from? The Constitution comes from the people. The Constitution belongs to the people, because it is the people who create the state, the people who create the institutions of government. So now, there where you are, Jonah, if you are a Christian, and the Bible, it says that God created all of us. God created the planet. What it simply means is that you, where you are, you are not capable of creating God, right? But God is capable of creating you, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you cannot create your creator. You get it? So if there's going to be any alteration to the human form, okay, or if we're going to say that human beings should no longer have legs, they should have, I don't know, scales or whatever, that can only come from God, because God is the creator. It cannot come from the created. You get it? So similarly with the Constitution, because government is a creature of the Constitution, okay, the creature cannot create its creator. Do you get what I mean?
Mm.
The one who's created cannot create the one who created him. Right. So if there are any fundamental changes that are supposed to happen to the Constitution, they have to be done by the creator. And the creator is the people. So you have to go back to the people and say, okay, what changes, fundamental changes are supposed to be effected in this Constitution have to come from the creators. Of course, a government being a creature of the Constitution is given certain powers. Some of the powers include amending the Constitution, right, which is given to Parliament. But that amendment does not mean that government or Parliament can recreate the constitutional order, okay? That amendment can only happen within the established constitutional order. The same way you are created by God, you are given powers to create your own children, which are sub-articles of yourself. But you do not have power now to go and turn around the whole substratum. I think that's the best example I can give. So in this sense, what it means is that the power of government is constrained, and it's constrained by the Constitution itself. So if government wants to attain more powers, it has to go back to the source of the power, which is the people. And the people have to give it additional powers. It cannot appropriate additional powers to itself.
While that sounds very straightforward,
Yeah.
it hits a snag when we reach the point that the Constitution doesn't define what consulting the people is.
Yes.
It doesn't define what a people-driven constitution is.
Yes.
So how do we have a people-driven constitution if no one knows what a people-driven constitution is?
Yeah, that sits outside the constitutional framework, because the people are the ones who create it. It's like you're asking me to say, oh, God created me. Where did God come from? That's a question. That's a question no one can answer, right? It's only God himself who can answer that. So that question also can also be answered by the people. But our courts have tried to answer this question, the Constitutional Court.
What is a people-driven constitution? With what the courts have tried to do, what do we come back and sit and say, here we are. We have a people-driven constitution.
Okay, right. So a people-driven constitution is very simple. There are a lot of examples that I can draw from, but let me answer your question first. So a people-driven constitution is that everything that is in that constitutional text can be traced back to the people.
Even in this case, even constitutions that are debatable can be traced back to some people.
No,
because surely it can never be traced back. There's no constitution that can be traced back to all the people.
No, but Bill 7 came from the Ministry of Justice. The Ministry of Justice is a government department.
And they argue that they're
representatives of the people.
But they also argue that there have been several commissions of inquiry. There have been a lot of review commissions that have been set up, and those commissions were there for the people.
Yeah, but which part of Bill 7 came from which commission? Did anyone explain to say this clause came from the Mwanakatwe report, this clause came from the Mvunga report? These things are very easy to trace. If you tell us that Bill 7 came from the Mwanakatwe report, we'll easily go to the Mwanakatwe report and check if it is there. Okay, that's a simple, people-driven process. Simply means that you have to consult the people. If I'm consulting you, Jonah, if I'm going to consult you on something, right, it doesn't make sense for me. I've already written something, and then I say, no, I want to consult you. I'm not consulting you. I'm seeking validation, right? But if I'm consulting you, I'll come to you and say, oh, you know what? I want to buy a certain car. What do you think? And then you start giving me your ideas, right? So, oh, I think maybe you should buy a Benz. I think you should buy a BMW. At the end of the day, from our discussion, I'll make that decision to say, oh, let me buy this car because I consulted Jonah, right? You see the difference? So, even when you're talking about a people-driven process, what is supposed to happen is that, yes, government has got the power to govern, No one is disputing that. Where does that power come from? The power comes from the people. It is the people who give government power on their behalf. That power is exercised on the people's behalf. That's why the court said, in a people-driven process, the government is the agent of the people and never the principal, right? So there's a principal and agent relationship between the government and the people. Government always acts on the people, on behalf of the people, on behalf of the people. So if we're saying it's a people-driven process, you as the government, you feel you have seen something wrong with our constitution, because the constitution is not yours. The constitution has got owners. The constitution belongs to the people. You go back to the people. Oh, people, we think the constitution you gave us is making it difficult for us to govern you. Okay? Now we want to change. Can you tell us how we can govern you better? If the people do not want to change, they'll tell you, oh no, government, you are not happy with the rules we have given you, but us the people are okay, so don't change. That's the instruction from the people. If they agree with you, they'll tell you, oh, okay, let's change it like this. Okay? For example, I'll give you a very practical example why it is very important that the whole thing comes from the people. You have said that Parliament has got the power to make any amendments, right? That is true. But that power is limited. Even if it's not written in the Constitution, it's still limited to a certain extent. For example, if we say that Parliament can make any amendment to the Constitution, right? What if Parliament wakes up today and passes an amendment and says that we will no longer have a president in this country?
But they can. Can they not?
Theoretically, they can. Theoretically, they can. This is why now when we're saying that the power to amend is not unlimited, it has a limitation. That can never happen because there is something that we call the basic structure doctrine. So the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be changed by Parliament. So if Parliament tries to effect such a change or wakes up today and say we've passed a law that there will no longer be a Parliament in this country, right? The courts will step in and say, no, no, you can't do that. The same way the courts stepped in under Bill 7. That means that even if it's not expressly written that the powers of amendment of Parliament are unlimited, they are limited because there are certain basic features of the Constitution that cannot be tampered with, no matter what. So if the amendments that Parliament wants to make have got the effect of changing that power structure that the people have entrenched in that Constitution, the courts have a duty to intervene and stop it. And that is what happened in Bill 7. So it is not correct to say just because we have Article 79 that gives the powers of amendment to Parliament, then Parliament can make any amendment under the sun. It can't happen because Parliament cannot wake up today and legislate itself out of existence. It can't do that. Even if they wanted to, the courts will come in and say, no, you can't do that. You can't wake up today and say, oh, Zambia has got no parliament. It only has a president. It can't happen.
When you look at the Zambian constitution,
Yeah.
the present Zambian constitution, and perhaps even making reference to the past versions of the constitution that we've had, and to other countries, like you've said, do we have a good constitution? Does this constitution need to be amended? I think that's actually the question a lot of people would like to know.
If you ask me if the constitution needs to be amended, I would say yes. Without doubt, it does need to be amended. In 2016, we failed to enhance the Bill of Rights. And for me, I would say the Bill of Rights is the most important part of the Constitution because it safeguards your rights as a citizen against abuse from the state, right? As long as we do not have an expanded and comprehensive Bill of Rights, then our Constitution will still need an amendment because the Bill of Rights, our Bill of Rights is stuck in 1991, right? 1991, this is when we put in that Bill of Rights, and it doesn't have most of the rights that you and me need to enjoy are not sitting in the Constitution. So if we're saying we want to amend the Constitution, yes, I agree, it needs to be amended. But how is it supposed to be amended? And what is supposed to be amended? Those are the key questions. And when you look at the discourse that is happening right now, no one is talking about the Bill of Rights. Everyone is talking about elections. For me, if you ask me, elections are the least important in this matrix because we have had 2 general elections under this current constitution. And we have had a change of government under this current constitution, which means that the electoral framework as set out in this constitution is actually working. Because if it wasn't working, then we wouldn't have had a change of government in 2021. You agree with me? But the problem is we are not attending to the important parts of the what? Of the Constitution. So if we are going to attend to those important parts of the Constitution, then yes, let's go ahead. And if we are going to amend the Constitution, let's not amend it in piecemeal. Okay? Let's not amend it in piecemeal. Let's look at the whole document and see what we can do to improve that document and to improve the governance of the country and to improve the life of Zambians. That should be the motivation. We shouldn't be motivated by political interests and elections and what. No, I disagree with that.
Do you think it matters at all when a constitution amendment is initiated?
Yes, I think it does.
There's been an argument that Parliament's mandate runs for 5 years.
Yes.
And as long as that 5 years has not elapsed, Parliament is still fully functional. And that means that even in January next year, Parliament can rise to amend the Constitution. So why does it matter when a Constitution amendment is introduced to the people?
Okay, I'll say that that argument is a bit simplistic. It is not taking into account everything and the lessons that we're supposed to learn from history. There's a certain philosopher who said those who don't learn from the past are condemned to what? To the same fate. I keep talking about 2016 when we failed to what? To amend the Bill of Rights. Do you know why we failed? It is because the referendum was put side by side with elections. And elections by their nature are a very partisan and a divisive event, right? You cannot tie an important national document, a document that requires consensus from every corner of Zambia, to the electoral cycle, because elections divide us. We're divided among party lines, right? So it is wise that any amendment to the Constitution is done outside the electoral cycle. That way, it makes it very easy for you to garner consensus from people because you are just looking at that amendment. You're not looking at anything else. You're not looking at competing interests. The 2016 Bill of Rights failed. The current government campaigned against the Bill of Rights in 2016. And for no particular reason, except that it was a PF championed document, right? But that Bill of Rights was supposed to benefit everyone in Zambia, both PF and UPND and whichever party was at the time. But because it was tied to elections, that Bill of Rights was defeated. And those who are in government right now should take responsibility for the defeat of the Bill of Rights in 2016. They should take responsibility. They should be magnanimous enough to accept that they also caused the Bill of Rights to fail because they campaigned against it. But was the Bill of Rights a partisan thing? No, it was not. But because it was tied to a partisan event, it became a victim of the electoral cycle. So I would say that if we are genuinely interested in amending this constitution for the benefit of the country and for it to last long, for it to be durable, for it not to suffer from instability, then we should separate it from the electoral cycle. We should do it outside the electoral cycle.
Is this possible, given the fact that when you look at the trend, constitution amendment and the review takes around 3 years from what we have observed.
Yeah.
So when you come into office and by the time that 3 years, if this is the time we're going by, arrives, you're almost, you are literally at the start of the next electoral cycle. So is it possible really to detach an electoral cycle from the amendment of the Constitution, given that we have elections every 5 years?
Yeah, it is. It's very possible. Like you said, the life of Parliament is 5 years. The tenure of any government is 5 years, right? So if it takes 3 years, you're actually halfway between the cycle. What is important is the process, not the end result, right? The process is the one which is important because the process is what feeds into the document, right? So if you start your process very close to the election, then you're bound to have a problem because competing political agendas will dominate the process. But if there are no stakes and you start, let's say this process started in 2022, let's say it started in 2022, the year after the election, and it's concluding now, right? It means right now we would only be talking about enactment. We wouldn't be talking about what should actually be in the document. That would have been done 2 years ago, you see? So the contention would have been sorted out What I'm trying to say is that all these issues, because this is bound to be a contentious exercise, there are competing interests. Like people will submit, right? They will submit. You have thousands of submissions. And now, which ones do you take and which ones do you leave, right? And you have to go back to the people to say, oh, we have taken these ones and left out these ones. Obviously, people will have a say about that. They'll have something to say. So that is the part that you do outside the electoral cycle. Because outside the electoral cycle, when you're making those discussions, when you're having those debates, the debates are purely about what you're doing. They are not about the election, if you get what I mean. So the difference is that if right now we were concluding the constitution making process, I wouldn't have a problem. I wouldn't have a problem, none whatsoever, because we've done all the hard work behind Uko when we didn't have elections. We were talking genuinely without anything. But now we want to start now. Oh yeah, we can start anytime, like you said, we can start anytime. But we shouldn't put a cap to say, no, finish before elections. How? This is October. The technical committee hasn't even started sitting yet. And I've told you that all the past technical committees, they have taken 2 years, 3 years. So I do not expect this technical committee to take less than 1.5 years. I don't expect that. So if they can finish their work outside the electoral cycle, we are good. But we should be careful not to hijack its work and say, no, you need to finish in 6 months. You need to finish by January. Why? Why should you finish by January? You've only started in October. They haven't even started. We haven't even seen their terms of reference. Have you seen them?
No, not yet. If you look at the constitution at the moment, would you, and there are some people who've argued this, I've heard State Counsel John Sangwa argue that the current constitution we have from 2016 is the best version of the Zambian constitution yet. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Why is that?
It's the best we've had so far. If you compare to the one-party constitution, for obvious reasons, it's way better. You go to the 1991 constitution. Why is it better? Because it brought in some progressive clauses that Zambians have been looking for. One, the 50+1 clause. It is in this current constitution. It's the first one to have such a clause. It also has the running mate clause, which is what people wanted, okay? And it brought in the constitutional court and all those things. All these are the things that have safeguards on power. It brought in executive mayors and all those things. You get that. We also have provisions on the environment, sitting in the constitution. All these other institutions that were brought in, the public protector, for example, all these things, we never had them before. So in terms of a comparative study from where we are coming from, where we are right now, the constitution we have, if we look at our previous versions, is actually the best. That is not a lie, that is the truth.
Do you think that the constitution reversing some of the decisions made in 1996, for example, requiring the parentage of a candidate, the fact that the 2016 constitution reverses that, there's no requirement for someone's parents to be born in Zambia. It is also providing an opportunity for independent candidates to participate in an election at presidential level. Does this enhance Zambia's democracy, in your view? Yeah,
it does. Oh, those are some of the progressive clauses I left out. Dual citizenship, all these things. You see, we live in a global world, right? The world has become smaller. It's easy to travel. It's very difficult to keep people contained. So let's say if you go and work in America and you get married to an American, right? Your child will be half Zambian and half American. So does that mean that your child should be disenfranchised from standing as president of Zambia because the mother is from America? No, the world has changed. There's a lot of intermarriages. Barack Obama became the president of America with a Kenyan father. That is progress. So even us as Zambia, we should move, because we should not lose our people by holding on to rigid rules. Okay? The world is moving. The world is moving fast. So yes, it enhances our governance. We need our best people. We need our best brains. There are Zambians who have been out there for years, who have attained citizenship in other countries, right? If we have strict rules that we can't admit them back, they can't have dual citizenship, and if they have dual citizenship, they can't stand for office, then we are losing out as a country. We are losing our brains. Do you get? So we should not put our people in that unfortunate situation where they have to choose between Zambia and another state. Why not have both?
Let us talk about this amendment to the Constitution now. Let's come to this amendment to the Constitution. A technical committee was recently appointed, and it's intended to consult citizens first, and then make some amendments, draft amendments. What are some of the safeguards that you would say are needed for us to not fall back into the trap of drafting a constitution that people do not want, drafting a constitution that is not driven by the people?
Thank you very much for that question. We need to learn from where we're coming from. How did our past endeavors collapse, or how did they fail, those that failed? They all failed because of, one, executive overreach. They were dominated by the executive, which is the presidency. Two, political interests trumped citizen interests. I can give you an example. In the current constitution, there is a clause which says that the president can only appoint ministers from members of parliament. That is not what Zambians submitted. In the Mvunga report, even the report from the technical committee, you will find that Zambians submitted overwhelmingly that they want to separate ministers from parliament. But the politicians changed because they had an interest. So how do we protect ourselves? First of all, there has to be a legal framework that protects the work of the technical committee. I would suggest that there should be an act of parliament that clearly spells out, one, the terms of reference, their scope of work in this technical committee. Two, their reporting guidelines. How do they conduct their hearings? Are their hearings in public? Are their hearings in private? It must be bound by legal provisions, because if something is contained in an act of parliament, or it's contained in the law, it is binding on everyone, including yourselves. So what if the technical committee that has been appointed right now, because there's no law, okay? There's no law that speaks to its operations. You've already said you do not know what their terms of reference are. I also don't know where I'm sitting. So we don't know what they'll be doing. We just know that they'll be consulting. How, okay? Ordinarily, there should be some sort of framework, some sort of guidelines that everyone can refer to, right? That we can hold them accountable to say, oh, but your guidelines say this, you did not do this, okay? Now, what if they wake up and say that we do not want media in our sittings? What are you guys from the media going to do?
I'm asking the question.
Yeah, you see, those are the problems that we have, right? In the absence of a legal mechanism to protect the work of this technical committee, we are bound to have those problems. If, let's say, they finish their report and then they decide to take it to the president, because they are appointees of the president, that's what they're supposed to do. They take the report to the president, and you and me have not seen it. And the president decides he doesn't want to make it public. What are you and me going to do? Because there is no law that is protecting us. There is no law that is protecting the process. Whereas if there was a law which specifically spells out that the moment the technical committee finishes its report, they submit to the president, they make the report public, right? It means that you and I have a law to report to. Even as we are demanding that report, say, oh, we are asking for this report. According to section what of the Technical Committee Act, this report is supposed to be a public document. It makes sense, doesn't it? But where we have nothing to refer to, then this process, I'm not saying it's going to be manipulated, but I'm saying it's susceptible, okay? The risk is there, okay? We cannot have an important national process hanging on the benevolence of its benefactors. Like, we should be hoping that the people will do the right thing. Why not just put in a law to safeguard everyone's interests?
Do you think that the composition of this committee, bringing together judges, legal experts, chiefs, faith leaders, civil society, will give the process greater legitimacy than past reform attempts?
Not necessarily, okay? If you look at the past, almost all the review commissions were headed by either a senior lawyer or if it's the technical committee, the immediate past technical committee was led by the former Chief Justice, Silungwe, His Lordship Anil Silungwe. Okay, now, you're talking about the composition. If I ask you there as a journalist, do you know what criteria was used to select the said individuals?
Not the criteria, but the reasoning behind it. Government argues, and the executive argues that the appointment is for it to be as wide as possible.
Yeah, but look, nobody knows how and why those people were selected, right? So some people have questioned and some people have put certain labels on certain people in that group, right? I'm not going to do that. That is not my interest. But what I would say is that, yes, the group represents a diversity of Zambia, which is a good thing. I agree it's a good thing. But when you're talking about legitimacy and you're talking about the protection of the process, that alone cannot guarantee you legitimacy. However, what can guarantee you legitimacy is the process that you get in constituting that committee. For example, the NCC that we're talking about, there was an NCC Act that determined, okay, the act itself spelled out who was supposed to be on the NCC, who was supposed to sit on that body. The act said that there should be representatives from all political parties. There should be representatives from the Law Association of Zambia. There should be representatives from the Engineering Association of Zambia. You see now. So what happens there is that this is an institutional setup. Okay? You just say, you guys, you have a media association. Do you have representation in the current technical committee?
As the media?
Yes.
No.
Is there a journalist there?
No.
You see now. So already the journalists will feel left out. So when you're talking of legitimacy now, these are the questions that you ask. However, in the past, we have done it before, even the National Dialogue Forum, it listed the institutions that were supposed to nominate people, right? For me, that is a better way of doing things because it also protects those who are appointing. It also protects the president, right? For example, if we had an act which says, okay, we need 25 people. We need one from LAS, right, who represents the lawyers. We need one from the engineering institution who represents the engineers. We need one from the media who represents the media. We need one from the churches. You keep on going like that, right? Us as LAS will elect our own representative to go and sit in that body. It means that that person has not been appointed directly by the what? By the president, right? You, the media, will also nominate your person. The engineers, the nurses, the whatever, the clergy, everyone will nominate their own person who is going to represent their interests in that body. So that because that is an institutional seat on that body, if, for example, LAS nominates me to go and sit on that technical committee, and then I start misbehaving, I stop representing the interests of the lawyers, LAS will just simply pull me out and put another person. Because the appointment is to the institution and not to the person. So for me, that would have been a more, to use your word, legitimate. Because no one is going to claim that, no, the president appointed his friends, he appointed his sympathizers, like what people are already saying. The president will just simply answer and say, oh, no, I asked you to nominate your representatives, and you did. Me, I just merely appointed. It ends there.
Finally, what should happen next with this Constitution Amendment Bill number 7? What do you reckon should happen? What's the best thing that should happen?
To Bill 7?
Yes.
Bill 7.1 should be withdrawn from Parliament because it was not withdrawn, it was deferred. So Bill 7 should be withdrawn from Parliament and it should be thrown in the bin. We start afresh. Let the technical committee start with a fresh mandate. Let's move on from Bill 7. Because Bill 7 was declared to be unconstitutional by the Constitutional Court. We cannot be using things which are unconstitutional. There's a saying in the law circles that the fruit of a poisoned tree is also poisoned. So we cannot eat from the poisoned tree, that is Bill 7. Let's just forget about it. Let's move on. Let the technical committee start on a clean slate and let the technical committee do its work without interference. Let them go and visit all 4 corners of Zambia. Let them take their time. Don't rush them. Let them do a thorough job and produce a proper document that every Zambian will feel a sense of belonging and will feel that it is their constitution. That is what I would ask to happen.
Mehluli Malisa, thank you so much for joining me on this
Thank you,
evening.
Jonah.
Great.